Hello, and welcome back to another video. You know that saying, everything happens for a reason? As cliche as it is, it's helped me 100% to get to where I am in my life. So let me explain. So to go all the way back, after I graduated college, like many college students, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had this bright idea. I'm like, you know what? I want to start a founder. And I think living in the US, which is hyper capitalistic and growing up with a lot of entrepreneurial friends, I knew one day that I want to work for myself. Didn't know why, I just wanted to do it. And perhaps it was an ego thing, perhaps like we were all raised in the US that to be successful, you have to run your own company, you have to build a business. And I kind of bought into that when I was much younger. And so I graduated from college and I'm like, I don't want to get a job, I want to start my own business. And I decided to start my own startup with one of my good friends, right? And to keep it very simple, the whole idea was, hey, we want to make customizable, tailored clothing for men. Growing up, it was very difficult to find clothes that fit me. When I went to school in the UK, I traveled around Asia. I'm like, wow, clothes fit me a lot better. So I started basically making clothes for myself. I became a certified tailor, took a course in New York, and then I partnered with my friend. I'm like, let's roll this out. And we were able to work our way up to, getting into investment banks and choirs and schools, but we didn't know what the heck we were doing, right? And I quickly found out that, wow, doing a business is a lot harder than I actually thought. I was, again, a lot younger with minimal experience. And not just that, it's a lot more difficult doing it with your best friend. It's very easy to think like, wow, because they're my family members, we're blood, we're good friends, we trust each other. When it comes to stress, expectations, timeline, money, banking, that's really gonna truly be the best stress test for any relationship that you have. And now I understand why you always hear the saying, be careful who you go to business with, especially your friends and family, because it could easily fracture that relationship. But it wasn't so much fracturing, it was more like, hey, I just learned that just because they're your friends, they don't automatically qualify to be a great co-founder. You have to really look for someone that has synergistical skills, whatever your strengths are, they fill in the gaps. But anyway, we were both really young and we're both really high and we want to be entrepreneurs, start our own businesses. And for the first several months, things were going great, but shortly after, things just went out of control, right? And we didn't know how to manage the money, we didn't know how to price our products well. We honestly didn't know what we were doing. But with that said, we learned a lot, right? I learned that if I were to work for myself again in the future, having the right partners is really important. But also more importantly, throughout that process, I learned what I want to do in life and what really... Did you just start your own recruitment agency and are struggling getting your own clients? Are you thinking about starting your own agency but afraid to make the jump? Do you have your own clients but you're struggling to find the perfect candidates fast? Do you have a full-time job and want to do recruitment part-time to make more money on the side and have no idea how to? If you answered yes to any of these questions, please consider joining our private community. It is a trust-based community where recruiters around the world can support, collaborate, and work together on placements all around the year consistently. In this community, you will directly have access to the real open jobs of my team and of our members, and you will also have the chance to access trainings, events, giveaways, and much more. If you are part of this community, I communicate and work with you as if you were on my own team, and I'll do whatever I can to do a placement together with your client or candidate. So if you're struggling to get your own clients or candidates and you want a way you can make sure you can be busy all year round by having access to many more open roles, then this is something you need to look into. This is open to people around the world and is open for recruiters in every industry and experience levels, as we will always have a good number of variety of open jobs across sectors, markets, and industries. I'm really happy to say that within the first 30 days, we have already have a new member with minimal recruiting experience do his first placement that had a total fee of almost $30,000 US, and we are working hard to do many more this year. If you are interested and excited, there are only a limited number of spots open, so make sure you sign up quick at patreon.com/recruiterpreston. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Discord. We can set up a time to chat. See you on the other side. I learned that, it's very important to try to separate family, friends, and coworkers and partners as much as possible. But also more importantly, throughout that process, I learned what I want to do in life and what really gravitated towards me in terms of a type of job or type of work that I foresee myself doing. So a lot of my friends were in finance, my dad was in finance. I thought growing up, I would go into finance, corporate finance and banking. I interned at a bank in New York City, quickly found out it really wasn't for me. And then I kind of went to the whole entrepreneurial thing and it went great, but then we really just kind of crashed and burned, ran out of money. But through that experience, I learned the basics of how to create a company and how to find a product and make it and how to market and guerrilla marketing, outreach, and all that stuff. But most importantly, I'm like, you know what? I really love the fast-paced people aspect of marketing or more importantly, sales. And I love loves talking to different people. Even though I found it very nerve-wracking or uncomfortable, I got a high from it, right? And so I walked away from that experience. Even though we didn't find success, I learned so much from it. And that's like, I think, an inherent trait that I have by default. Whatever happens, whether I do well or don't do well, I always try to see the silver lining and then try to leverage from it. After that experience, I actually went back to the UK to get my master's, and I graduated. It's just like when I graduated college, I didn't know what I want to do. And I'm like, you know what? You got to get back in the game. You got to take life a little more seriously because I'm older, and now I got my master's, so I need to go find a good job. And lo and behold, the biggest irony is that I didn't go get a job. In fact, I didn't even start my own company. I actually got sucked into the MLM world, the network marketing world. A lot of people call it as a pyramid scheme. And I got sucked into one of these companies, and I quickly learned about that world, the dark sides of it, the predatory practices of it, but most importantly, learned a lot, right? And just like how I did everything in my life, whatever I decide to do, even though it might not be like the right vehicle, I went all in. And even though we went all around New York and all around the East Coast, pushing these products, I developed a stronger affinity and desire to exceed in sales, right? So like in this world, not to go too deep into it, but I found myself talking a lot to a lot of different types of people, from young to old, different backgrounds, different ethnicities. I found myself even talking on stage. And so riding back on the pigtails of my startup experience, I'm like, you know what? I want to do sales. If there's one thing that you learn in the network marketing or MLM world, is sales, for better or for worse. And I think some of the best people I know who are entrepreneurs today came out of that world, because if you take away anything, you know how to get a product, how to sell it, how to communicate to any random person out there. And so you don't really have that fear anymore. You can actually literally walk up to a person, start talking to them, try to sell them, and get rejection after rejection after rejection and rejection. And so even though I only did it for about a little under 2 years, which was still a long time after a master's, most of my family members and friends were like, what the heck are you doing? Are you like, this is not real, this is not legit. But despite all of that, right, I went all in, and everything I do, I just go all in. And I think at that time, and I believe at that time, this is the right vehicle for me to grow, to push my career and life forward, and we'll give it the best that we can. And unfortunately, the way that these companies work is it's really, really difficult to work to the top, but I was able to kind of quickly disengage from that world after about 2 years. And like, you know what, I really need to find a job, a white collar job. I had some pressures from my network and family, and like, try to find something more credible, more legit, with a stable income. And speaking of income, when I did my startup, I barely took in anything. If anything, we lost money after that run. And even network marketing, I think the most I made was probably like $1,500 to $2,000 a month, taking away New York City taxes. I was borderline just struggling, not making anything, right? So after that, I learned a little bit more about myself. I learned that I'm okay, I'm resilient, I'm okay with rejection and failure. And just like how I walked away from the startup experience, I did the same thing with this MLM experience. Everything that you do, you learn, and then you leverage it as a stepping stone to hopefully something better, right? And so after that, I need to get a job. I felt really behind because at this point I was a couple years out of a master's degree. I didn't have a resume to, be proud of. I didn't really do a lot of internships or a lot of different jobs at high profile companies like McKinsey or Google or AOL or things like that. I was literally starting from scratch, and I was probably like 25, 26, 24, 25, 26 years old, right? And so then I found myself like, you know what? I really still want to do sales. I still want to do business development. And I think that train of thought ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made, because I'll explain later. But I ended up going out there and, just like a lot of you guys, looking for a job, like entry-level jobs, whatever I could get. And I just basically targeted business development and sales. That's all really I knew. And then so I started, luckily, getting interviews at a lot of these random companies. And then, as you saw in my previous videos, or if you didn't know my story, I applied for a sales associate job that ended up being a recruiter job, where I basically learned how to be a recruiter at a nationwide award-winning tech staffing firm, and I worked my way up. But when I started, my starting salary was only $30,000. I stayed there for about a year. My salary bumped up to $50,000, which was the most money I've ever made in my life. But one of the biggest reasons why I decided to do the recruiting job is, like sales, I knew one thing, that if I was able to work hard, my income can catapult and accelerate much faster than a regular 9-to-5 annual job where I have to wait a whole year to get a promotion. Sales is on performance. If you do well, your income can 3-5x like that. If you don't do well, then your income will just go down like that, right? But I knew there's one thing at that point in my life. I knew how to work hard, keep my head down, be humble, and just be a sponge and learn as much as I could in a sales job. And so that's what I did. I was still at the same time recovering from my first failed kind of startup experience. I'm like, you know what? One day I'm still going to work for myself. And so that's another reason why I joined my recruiting job, is because they were in tech, and I was able to interface with all these disruptive founders who raised a lot of money, building a lot of great things. I'm like, this is a great way for me to learn a really cool skill and high in demand skill, but also hopefully network and learn more from these founders just by working with them indirectly and helping them out, right? And so I was able to work my way up, and not to go too much into it. If you haven't seen my story, make sure to see a previous video. But after a year, I was making the most money I've ever made. I was making $50,000 plus commission. And if I stayed a little bit longer, I probably would have easily cleared 6 or multiple 6 figures, right? But at that time, I was so like, in my mind, overly ambitious, right? I was like, oh, I need to be a founder. This is not successful. Being recruiting is not cool. I want to be a multi-millionaire and be a multi-billionaire or whatever. I was too like edgy with my career, my life. And I'm like, this is just a stepping stone, right? I couldn't see myself working and being a recruiter for 10 years later. Haha, irony is I'm still a recruiter now. But basically after a whole year, I'm like, I can't really grow more. I can make more money, but I can't really grow more. And so for me, while money is important to survive, it wasn't the primary driver. I wanted to take chances, take more risks, but most importantly, learn and have new experiences, right? The recruiting experience solidified again my sales skills. I was able to build more and level up more of my sales foundation from my early startup to MLM to recruiting. And then basically, because I was also so fascinated about the whole startup world and hopefully one day I can be a founder again, I decided to leave my recruiting job for an internal recruiting job at an early stage startup where I also had a chance to wear multiple hats, sales, biz dev, all that stuff. From the recruiting job, so what I learned was that, hey, I have a good work ethic, my sales skills were pretty decent, but I didn't really want like a corporate 9-to-5 job, right? I wanted something where I took a little bit bigger swings, a little bit more risk with a higher payout, which altogether really made sense why I left my recruiting job to the startup. Because I'm like, I can be one of the founding members. If this startup did well, then basically I can get a huge payout, right? And also learn really closely with the founder. So I remember leaving that and people are like, why did you leave? You went from, the bottom into one of the top recruiters out of 300 nationwide. I still kept following the recruiting track because I'm like, you know what? I love sales, but if I continue to do sales within recruiting, my career can move forward. I'm building my resume, looking more legit with my LinkedIn profile, all that good stuff. And so that's the thing that I did. Joining the early stage startup, I took another step back in income, right? I think I went from 50 to potentially 6 figures, including commissions, to I think I was getting maybe $3,000, $3,500 a month in cash from the early stage startup. I learned so much about this founder. And I think while the founder had a few aspects, a lot were just not the best things in terms of what good leadership is, right? Being able to underpay and low pay your team, which, gave me a foul taste amongst my colleagues. Founder did not have any insight and clarity in terms of the next roadmap and how to push the company forward. Even struggled a lot with raising money from investors and just kept spending a lot of the cash that was already raised on frivolous things. And so I learned a lot of what not to do. I also got a taste of what it's like to be working at a super early stage startup that was venture raised. I made a lot of friends. I was able to flex and really practice my recruiting skills. But again, I was underpaid, but I was still able to get more experience on like early startup life was like and what a founder life was like at an early stage startup and how she'd be working 24/7. Despite all of her shortcomings and weaknesses, she was still very passionate about what she did and was able to kind of form a small team like us. I also learned the importance of really diving deep when it comes to interviewing. I think if I dug a little bit deeper, I asked more serious questions, I probably would have passed that opportunity and went and joined somewhere else because literally, as you guys know, 5-6 months later, that company also just ran out of cash. So that experience coincided with my startup experience. I really also learned the importance of just cash flow management, pricing, right? Focusing more on profitability versus unnecessary spending. And so as you can see, as my career and as the years progressed and I tossed myself in a lot of these different experiences, I learned everything I could aside from the job, right? From the founders, from the managers. And then I quickly became, like a fast developing recruiter who was really just confident talking to people of all kinds. And I think my previous startup and sales experience helped me to be confident talking to board members and CEOs, big founders when it comes to working for myself or even when I was at the recruiting job. And so everything happens for a reason. Every year that goes by, as long as you show up, as long as you try new things, you will level up. Whether you feel like you're not, you are actually leveling up over time and you're just leveraging and you're going to further leverage your greater and stronger skill set to the next opportunity. So that opportunity crashed and burned 5-6 months. And then I found myself working for myself, right? And I decided to, well, first of all, do that because I'm like, I tried the job thing. I can always get a job. I really resonated with the agency lifestyle and recruiting. I understood the fundamentals really well. I knew exactly how to find clients, how to find candidates because it was 360. So I decided to, again, one more time, make the decision to start working for myself. And super grateful for a supportive family, supportive fiance at time. Basically didn't have any money to earn to save. And so my favorite story is I basically used my fiance's credit card at that time and incorporated my company, found an accountant, bought like LinkedIn and all the initial tools, and I hit the ground running. And then, fast forward 12 months, my income on my own desk as a solo recruiter exceeded over $500,000. And so I went from like making nothing to making 30,000, making 50,000 to making 40,000 again, now to almost $500,000 all by myself. One of the reasons why I was able to really push through and even function as a recruiter and operate as a recruiter today is a lot of the work ethic and tough skin, the communication that I developed through my previous experiences, right? I learned how to be a good founder. I learned how to control my money and my spending. I learned how to really focus on important income producing activities. I learned that even if it would consider something a bad experience, there's always something that you can take away from it positively, and you just learn from it, you leverage it, and you just level up as much as you can. And so by trying to start my own kind of startup before and experiencing other sales jobs afterwards, the whole initial like working for yourself, experiencing failure and rejection didn't affect me. It wasn't new to me, right? That stress and that fear was something that I felt and became familiar with myself many years ago. And so I felt like what I've done really gave me a fast track, or really helped me ramp up working for myself and push through a lot of the moments where a lot of new entrepreneurs or freelancers or solo recruiters would just simply give up because they're just not used to the magnitude and scale of rejection, working in chaos, being accountable for your own actions, having to show up every single day, being your own boss, being your own accountant and administrator. All that was already kind of familiar territory with me. And so I was able to really honestly just hit the ground running. And so I kind of wanted to share this with you, that life, everything happens for a reason. If you feel like you're lost, there were many times in the past decade I felt like, what am I doing? I'm lost. But make the most of every experience that you have. And while it's really great to have important goals, I want to be an entrepreneur one day, ask yourself why, right? Like just for your ego, for the sake of it, because like it's deep down, like that's all you can do, or like, try to have more clear goals that are more reasonable short term than super big goals, right? But most importantly, slow down, enjoy the journey. And even though you find yourself in unconventional situations like working in, MLM or the network marketing world, or starting your own business and not knowing what to do, feeling like you wasted 1-2 years of your life, everything happens for a reason. And chances are, even if you don't agree with me right now, if you sit down and think about it, you'll realize, wow, I actually learned a lot. When you think I actually learned a lot, I'm sure, and I bet you learned at least 1, 2, or 3 things that you can leverage or help you in your next job or business moving forward. And my income basically reflects the culmination of just like the different experiences professionally and work I've done the past 10 years, plus my work ethic, right? And knowing that, hey, even though I felt really behind in my age group, I'm like, I even got a master's and now I have an internship where I'm starting from the bottom, working, as an entry-level recruiter when my peers are like 18, 19, and I'm like in my mid-late 20s. Like, I didn't let that faze me. I just kept my head down knowing that my time will come, and just learn as much as you can. And so one of the biggest lessons I've done, my biggest takeaways retrospectively looking back in my life is, number one, I was able to embrace sales just unintentionally. And sales is, I think, one of the best things anyone can learn, because that's everything that you do in life. Sales, how you persuade someone, negotiate, how you communicate, all that is super important. Whether or not you have a sales job, that's important with your friends, with your family, with your job, talking to your managers, pitching ideas. That was able to really help me to unintentionally, without going through courses or reading books, just learn firsthand a lot of different sales environments. And number two, while I basically was super eager and really hoping that I just wanted to be an entrepreneur one day, somehow at the same time, I was also really patient, right? I was able to not jump around too much. I was able to really go all in on each thing and just give myself at least a year or more just to fully embrace it, right? And I did not compare myself to anyone else. I compared myself only to myself. And I'm like, hey, even though I might feel these insecurities or weaknesses, my time will come. And the funny thing is, I didn't think I was gonna ever be a recruiter for longer than 2 or 3 years. The joke's on me. Almost 10 years later, I'm still in it. It's an industry that I still practice hands-on with every single day. I love it. I love the game, love finding clients, love finding candidates, love also just sharing my journey. But if you're ever feeling lost, you ever feel behind, everything is okay. Just take your time, learn, go one step at a time. Don't try to go from 0 to 100. Focus on going from 0 to 10, and then 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 70, 70 to 100. Do it sustainably. And I promise you, even though you feel like you're going sideways or background or diagonally left, diagonally right, you're learning and you are leveling up intentionally or unintentionally. It's happening behind the scenes, and your time will come if you choose to show show up, never give up, embrace all the directions life throws at you, and just as much as you can, enjoy it as much as possible. So it just completely blown away just by, how my income has leveled up. But if you were to just kind of look into all the other things that help me get to where I am now, and if you're able to develop a high in-demand skill, you're able to work really, really hard, and you're able to have patience for multiple years, you can find and create amazing results just like these. So I'm not a 15-year-old that made $1 million or all these super young kids. I honestly felt like watching social media, I started super, super late, and I never thought I would be able to make income this level. But hey, it's all about levels, and it's all about working hard for your goal, and it's all about just showing up and just being consistent, doing the best that you can, and going all in regardless of whatever crazy directions life throws at you. So I hope you like this video. If you want to see more like these and where I talk more about my background and my story, please let me know. It's always fun kind of sharing with you more insights. As I look back in my life, I'm very grateful for it. And I think for all the great memories that you have, all the challenging memories that you have as well, try to find the positive in it, right? I think for every hardship, to me, it's never a failure. It's always a learning lesson. And it's always like, what could I have done better? Or, hey, when this happened to me, like, how did I change for the better? Or how did I change? Or how did I grow from it? Maybe like you learned how not to find yourself in situations like these again. Maybe you learned how to manage your emotions better. A lot of things could have happened. And even if it's not as clear as that, maybe behind the scenes, low key, you grew in small little ways or percentages, right? That it might be helping you right now with your job or your career, and you may not even know it or think it. So, hey, anyways, don't want to keep rambling on, but I really hope that you found some value in this. I was able to, and it was quite enjoyable to kind of share this with you. And I hope that this provides you value, inspiration, and just keep your chin up, keep being positive, keep putting the work, and you can get it done. So thank you again. We'll see you on the next one.